Hello, my name is Scott Berger, and I'm going to be reading to you my story, Stranded. Stranded. That was the only word inside my head as I stepped out of the train station with my two traveling companions. During the summer of 2012, I traveled to Japan so that I could spend my summer honing my teaching skills in the classrooms of a small kindergarten. But while I was there, I also wanted to explore its rich national history and culture as well. During my 3-month stay, I was lucky enough to have a weekend to explore the Japanese countryside in celebration of my 21st birthday. My fellow travelers, Shannon and Leslie, and I, with the help of our Japanese host family, planned a rustic trip to a nearby castle. My mind buzzed as I imagined the ancient architecture of the centuries-old castle and the rich history that unfolded within its walls. As the weekend that the trip was scheduled quickly approached, I spent my free time researching what I might discover during my visit to the castle. What I saw filled my mind with wonder and awe. The castle itself was located atop a steep hill surrounded by a sea of bright cherry blossom trees. The castle neighbored a steep hillside as well, and it plunged quickly into the dark expanses of the Pacific Ocean. Also, the castle overlooked the small, bustling town of Tateyama and its busy citizens. My heart was set on an amazing adventure spent exploring this beautifully crafted national landmark and the history of love that it contained. However, after the lengthy but peaceful train ride, the three of us stepped out onto the Tateyama train station landing platform, alone and clueless. We had no idea where we were or how we were ever supposed to find the castle. We were stranded. Wide-eyed and unprepared, I, along with Shannon and Leslie, scanned the nearby buildings, frantically searching for a sign or building with English writing anywhere that we might use to help us stable our bearings. There were none. I reluctantly slipped my hand into the pocket and pulled out a bright pink cell phone that our teacher Keiko-sensei had loaned to us in case of any confusion or emergency. We called her Keiko-sensei because she, along with being our friend, was also our teacher, and sensei meant teacher. In Japan, a professional title holds immeasurable value, so we made sure to always honor Keiko by using hers. Having only just stepped off the train, the three of us had hoped that our independence would not have come crashing all around us within the first seconds we were left alone in the foreign city. This was not our first trip that we had made into the Japanese towns and cities, but it was our first time traveling this far by ourselves, without one of our Japanese friends helping us read and communicate with others, and we had hoped that our past excursions would have prepared us adequately enough to spend just one day alone. We were wrong, and we needed help. With my friends in agreement, and perplexed as to how we were already so lost, I dialed in Keiko-sensei's phone number and waited as the hum of the ringing droned louder and louder with the escalating tension that each of us felt. I began to think thoughts of doubt and worry. What if she doesn't pick up? What do we do then? Would we just leave and return home on the next train? No, we can't do that. We spent too much money on the train ride here to not attempt to at least try and see the castle. She has to pick up. "Hello, Scott Sensei," the voice on the other end of the phone said. "Are you okay?" "Yes, we are just fine, Keiko-sensei," I returned as I let out a giant sigh of relief. "We're just a little confused and overwhelmed because we honestly have no idea what any of the signs around us are saying." Keiko-sensei laughed and let out a string of Japanese phrases that were completely incomprehensible to me. I hated when she did that. It made me feel dumb when I had no idea what my Japanese peers were saying, and my sense of humor was dwindling quickly. After her laughing subsided, she alleviated my tension with, "Don't worry, Scott. I will help." Her instructions were to head to a bus stop and look for the time of the next bus arrival. The buses in Japan run almost exactly according to their schedules. Confident that we were competent enough to find the bus stop, Keiko-sensei wished us luck and ended the phone call with a quick "sayonara." Revitalized with our teacher's instructions and confident that we now had a steady footing in our journey, We walked to the bus station with our heads high and wearing our optimism on our sleeves. However, that optimism. As we introduced ourselves to a woman working at the bus station, we quickly realized the woman we were speaking with was going to be very little help in informing us as to when the next bus arrived, because she was not a bus station employee, and we were not even at a bus station at all. As realization of our situation dawned upon our sulking heads, I gave up a moan of disbelief and along with my friends began walking back towards the door, more lost than we were when we first entered. As we turned back to the train station, exhausted and ready to retire for the day, the woman we had just spoken to rushed from her building and motioned for us to follow her. Unsure as to where she was leading us, we followed apprehensively as she led us to a small building on the corner of the street. This was the real bus station. It made sense that we had not found the station, as it was unlike any of the stations we had visited in the past. It did not have any large signs denoting its purpose, or any flashing lights or posters. Really, it was not a station at all, but more like a plexiglass hut. Uncharacteristic of most everything in Japan, this bus stop was dirty, run down, and appeared ready to fall over at even the weakest gust of wind. The woman pointed to the benches inside and gestured for us to sit and stay. We shouted out, "Arigato," and bowed as she returned to her station. Sitting in the station, we looked around for other travelers using the bus station. There were none. Normally this would not have been a problem, but as we sat there twiddling our thumbs and chuckling over the events that had just occurred, we realized that the bus schedule posted in front of us, following the overall motif of the bus stop, was unlike the bus schedules we're used to using in the past. The information was listed in a new order and lacked any English at all. We looked at the schedule like a child looks at advanced calculus. We were exactly where we were supposed to be, and yet we still remained lost. As a wave of doubt and fear rushed over my mind, Shannon and Leslie looked at me, revealing that they had just made the same realization as I. I shoved my hand back into my pocket and fished out the pink cell phone. I dialed Keiko-sensei's number for a second time, ready to explain the ridiculous situation to her as best as I could. We could do little but laugh at how complicated this simple truth was becoming. And it was only about to grow more complicated. My jaw dropped skeptically as Keiko-sensei unveiled her plan to solve our problem once and for all. "Scott-sensei, do you see a police box around you?" Yeah, I think there's one next door." "Good. Walk in there and hand them the phone. I will talk to them for you." "What?" I questioned. "You want me to just walk in there and hand them the phone?" "Exactly," Keiko-sensei affirmed. I sent an unsure glance to my friends as they followed me over to the neighboring police box. We were all thinking how insane the idea sounded. 3 Americans casually walking into a police station and handing the police officers a cell phone and asking one of them to begin speaking to whoever was on the other end. It seemed very conspicuous to our party, and we walked into the police box with our nervousness apparent on our foreheads and in our shaking knees and hands. All we wanted to do was see a castle. We did not want to get into any trouble with the law during our visit, but what other option did we really have? I walked to the front desk and introduced myself to the officer sitting there. I took the phone away from my ear and held it out for the man to take. He stared at me with a look of uncertainty as I tried to explain to him that I needed him to begin talking into the phone. I could tell immediately from the angle of his dark eyebrows and the peculiar tilt of his head that I was not succeeding in my attempts to communicate. He looked at me, over to the phone, to Shannon and Leslie, back to me, and then back down to the phone, all while not budging from his seat. Again, I attempted to explain myself and why I was holding my phone out for him. But before I could finish, he reached out with one hand and gently picked up the remarkably pink phone from mine. As he examined the machine, he tried diligently to ask how he could help us in the small pieces of English that he knew. Need to call help? He began pressing buttons and mocked putting the phone to his ear. The officer's eyes grew wide and he jumped with surprise as the phone met his. He was clearly not expecting for there to be anybody on the other side of the line. Luckily for us, Keiko-sensei was still on the line, and she began speaking to the officer, explaining our situation to him. My two friends and I relaxed our shoulders and stood up a bit taller, knowing that her plan had worked. The officer took a moment to laugh at the situation, and then came over and shook each of our hands as he walked us out the front door and back to the bus stop next door. It just so happened that as we were returning, the bus was pulling into the stop. I looked at Shannon and Leslie and said, "Well, how about that timing?" They smiled and giggled as we walked up to the bus. The officer returned the cell phone to me, and I slipped it back down into my pocket, hoping that that would be the final time I would need to use it for the day. The officer bowed, wishing us a safe trip, and we boarded the bus ready to continue on to Tateyama Castle. We sat down in the cushioned bus seats and shared a well-deserved smile as we did all we could not to burst out into loud fits of laughter. The trip to Tateyama Castle was meant to be made special by the castle itself, but was made truly memorable by the events that all started with leaving the train station completely stranded.